Again, I apologize for being a little late here. Ran a little late. Carol, I understand we have to insert into the current minutes a correction from the minutes of the 12th of May. Could you explain that a little bit so we can all understand?
Okay. For the record, there's a minor correction on the May 12th minutes, which were approved on May 26th. The agreement of sale for the 409 Old Penland Pike should be recorded as Resolution 2020-10 and authorization for Gilmore and Associates to perform the Phase 1 environmental study for 409 Old Penland Pike should be the motion.
All right, so this meeting minutes will reflect the correction?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay, that's all we need. Is that correct, Craig?
Correct. Yes, those changes will be in the tonight's meeting minutes, June 23rd.
Okay, thank you very much. Just a reminder, this meeting is being audio recorded, just so everybody's aware. The first order of business here is a receipt of the minutes for May the 26th, 2020. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? No opposed. Motion passes. Next, we have the receipt of the year-to-date budget report for April and May. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
I have a second.
Second.
Seconded.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Motion passes. Receipt of the balance sheet for April and May 2020. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
I have a second.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, thank you. Next is a resolution. It's preliminary final conditional use in land development approval for Huntsy. I'm not sure who wants to speak for this on staff. And would it be Ken Amy?
Of a parcel of land which was created by the board last year. It was a 5.35 acre parcel subdivided from the Penn Lynn Club. It's located right at the intersection of Huntseat Drive and Gypsy Hill Road. This application is to take that 5.35 acre parcel and split it into 3 building lots. And on the screen, Craig has the three lots shown. This has been through review by staff, by our planning commission, by the county planning commission, and has been recommended for approval by the planning commission and by the building and zoning subcommittee. All of the details are taken care of. The applicant has agreed to pay the township all the appropriate fees. And at this point, the resolution, which was prepared by Mr. Spears, is ready for the board to act on. I believe Mr. Woodrow was going to be here, and perhaps Rob Lewis as well, who may want to add something to the discussion.
Good evening, Rob Lewis. I am counsel for this project. I do believe Tim Woodrow was joining us. I'm not sure if he is one of the iPhones or the other unidentified. I know he was scheduled to be in another municipality earlier this evening, but thought he would join us. I do not have much to add to Mr. Amy's summary. I think it's an accurate summary. There are a couple of waivers and deferrals on the plans, which are essentially to account for the fact that while the plans generally have made allocations for things such as impervious coverage and the trees necessary to be removed to insert driveways, But because the final calculations on both of those can't be determined until a building permit is submitted, we have requested those to be deferred, and we must comply when an individual building permit is submitted for each of those building lots. I think that's about all that I would have to add to Mr. Amy's summary.
Okay.
Mr. Lewis, I have one question, and that is, you do represent the applicant,
I do.
and you've had a chance to review the resolution,
I have.
and you accept the condition.
We are, and we do.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Does any of the other supervisors have any thoughts or comments?
On what? I'm sorry.
The resolution for preliminary final conditional use and land development approval for Hunt Seat Drive.
Nope.
Okay.
I'd make a motion that we approve the final conditional use and land development for Huntseat Drive as presented.
Okay.
A second.
Do I have a second? Okay. Is there any member of the public who would like to make a comment on this? Greg, is anybody raising their hand in the chat window? I'll take that as a no. All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, the resolution passes.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lewis.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just interrupt, just to explain my tardiness. Craig and Jamie, apparently this link on the website isn't working too well. And I was trying to share the link with interested parties. I don't know if it worked or not, but it was apparently an issue.
So I believe the interested parties got on. This is Keith Evia. I'm the treasurer for Penland Club.
Hi.
Good evening.
Great. Thank you. Next up on the agenda is a resolution for outdoor dining in limited retail use during the recovery. Mr. Amy?
Yes, I'll take this one as well, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. As we all know, the state is in the yellow phase of recovery at this point, which allows outdoor dining but no indoor dining. We are scheduled to go into the green phase on Friday, which will allow 50% of indoor areas to be used for dining in restaurants and a limited area of retail space to be used in retail stores. The purpose of this resolution is to allow temporarily to allow additional outdoor dining and outdoor retail sales in areas where they wouldn't typically be permitted by zoning, but this would be a temporary measure in recognition of the fact that some of these small businesses have been suffering through the pandemic and are trying to get their feet back on the ground. So it will give them an ability or at least some flexibility to allow some limited outdoor use to help to make up for some of the area that they're losing because of the restrictions during the yellow and green phase of recovery.
Ken, did you tell me?
What? Pardon? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Can you tell me where the genesis of this resolution came from?
Actually, I don't know exactly where it started, but it was drafted by a municipality in Bucks County, and then it was circulated through a zoning officers group in Bucks and Montgomery County. And most of the municipalities in our area are considering it and have either adopted it or plan to adopt it in the near future. So I don't know the exact genesis, but it did originate through a zoning officers group.
Okay, thank you. And I'm sorry to interrupt.
Now, the only other thing I was going to add is that the resolution as currently drafted has a 90-day expiration period. The Planning Commission discussed this at their meeting last week, and they discussed the possibility of recommending that it be for a longer period of time, 120 days rather than 90 days. But ultimately, they said that they were comfortable with either and felt that the supervisors should decide which they felt was more effective. Whether you felt the 90 days, it can always come back. It's only a resolution. It doesn't need to be advertised. It can always come back, and the board can extend it at some time in the future if it's deemed necessary.
Okay, thank you. I think it's very interesting. And it helps our business community. So I just wanted to give credit where credit was due here. Does any of the other supervisors have any comments or thoughts on this?
Yes, I just have one thought. I'm feeling pretty optimistic now, and I know this resolution is to be in effect for 90 days. Can we add language to the effect of, or in the event that restrictions are lifted before that 90 days? So in effect, it will be in effect until the earlier of full lifting of the restrictions by the governor, or the 90 days. Again, I'm being optimistic.
I'm not sure I understand. Could you repeat that?
So the resolution reads that it will expire in 90 days. The restrictions on outdoor dining capacity, et cetera, will last for 90 days. That's in accordance with the official green coded guidelines from the governor's office. In the event that those are lifted before the 90 days, I'd like this resolution to also expire.
So you would like the resolution to expire before the 90 days are up?
In the event that all the restrictions are lifted. That's the resolution mirrors the green phase, I believe, that we're entering into. And that's handed down by the governor's office. In the event that he lifts it because our numbers are good or for whatever reason, I don't want our restrictions to remain in effect beyond what the state is mandating.
I want to be clear also. Are you indicating, Ms. Hunsinger, that if the emergency declaration is gone for whatever reason, because we've been successful in mitigating our risk, if the emergency declaration is eliminated, you want to then eliminate the ability for restaurants to hold outside dining?
Well, it would, well, I see what you're saying, but the reason we're doing this is to give them more capacity. I don't, these restrictions mirror what is being mandated by the governor. So I just want this resolution to go away in the event that the governor's restrictions go away.
Well, wouldn't it automatically happen if that did occur by the governor, if he lifted the restrictions?
Well, I think a resolution remains enforceable as long as it's still in effect. Is that right, Mr. Pat Spears?
It's effective as long as it states it is.
Yeah.
But one of the problems is this is one of those areas of the law the governor has given us permission, and it's been ratified, that we can not follow the formalities of the municipality's planning code. I think when he ends the restrictions, I believe there's a 60-day period for most things that he has. So I suspect that whether you say this expires or not, it will expire when the authority to not follow the MPC. Normally, if you wanted to allow outdoor dining, it would be changing your zoning code and would take you 6 months to a year to get passed, by all the reviews that you have to go through. So this is specifically allowed. So I'm thinking that it can't go much beyond. If it goes 30 days beyond the product limit, that's where you are now. It's not forever. It's never forever.
So the emergency declaration continues despite us being in the green phase.
Correct. He has not. So, when he lifts the emergency declaration,
we either have 30 or 60 days. We either have 30 or 60 days and everything. So it no longer would be applicable.
Right.
But you're saying,
I have nothing in front of me to tell you that, but my recollection was 60 days. But that wasn't for this particular clause either. But
so I just wanted to be clear that Supervisor Hunsinger is saying, despite the fact that we're given a grace period, she wants it to end immediately.
I wasn't aware of the grace period. So if the 90 days is within the entire time frame, that's fine.
90 days may be beyond it if he closes it tomorrow, but that's not likely to happen.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, Ms. Hunsinger, what you're saying is that as written, the resolution is okay then?
From what Mr. Spears just explained, yes.
It will expire when the governor's authority for doing it expires.
Mm-hmm.
Because then you'd be in violation of the MPC.
Okay, thank you. Do any of the other supervisors have any comments?
I have a question. So then if the governor lifts the emergency and this resolution is faded out, then that means that anyone who wants to have the extended outdoor dining would then have to come and have rezoning occur around their business?
You would either have to amend your zoning ordinance to permit it, or they would have to come get a variance to allow it.
I see. Okay.
Anything you're letting be done that's not in your zoning code would have to be approved either through the formality of a variance or a zoning change.
Okay. If there's no more no additional comments, can I have somebody put forward a motion, please?
So moved.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Is there anybody in the audience that would like to comment?
I see nothing, Mr. Gray.
Okay. Can I have a vote, please? All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, that was unanimous. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the volunteer vacancy board, volunteer vacancy position and appointments. So there's been some discussion. We have interviewed a number of candidates. We probably have had more candidates interested in the positions that are available than we have ever had. And I'm finishing my 11th year, and I don't know about you, Mr. Brandt, but in that time, I don't ever recall this much interest in any of the boards.
I agree with you. What you just said, 100%.
Okay, so there's some concerns, some issues. One of the issues is the expansion of one of our boards from 7 to 9. So planning currently has a 7-member board, and it has to be an odd number so we can break a tie. And there's some interest in making that 9 because of all the interest that we have. So I think what we have to do is really decide as a group whether or not we want to have 7 positions on the board or 9 positions on the board. So would the supervisors care to comment on that?
This is Supervisor Duckett or Danielle. I am in favor of increasing it to 9. I think with the level of interest and I guess in the spirit of having the board be reflective of the community, there were people from all different walks of life and different backgrounds, different worldviews that I feel could do nothing but complement the board. And there were some extremely qualified candidates. So it would, based upon all of that and the amount of the length of time that the individuals had applied and just getting us to review them now, I feel that it would be in our best interest to include them in the process and for them to be included in the commission. So based upon that, I would be in favor of increasing it to 9.
Is there any other supervisor who'd like to make a comment?
I would agree with Danielle that we have a sufficient number of highly qualified people that it would, I think it would be a good thing to increase the number so that we can accommodate 2 additional people on the board or the committee, sorry.
Okay.
I have a question for you, Craig. I don't know if you can hear me.
I can hear you. Yep.
All right. What are the openings now without the expansion of the board?
Right now, we currently have vacancies, 1 vacancy in the Park and Rec Board, 2 vacancies in the Planning Commission, and 1 vacancy in the Vacancy Board.
All right, so if we go from 7 to 9, then you're talking about 4 in the Planning Commission.
Yes, if we go to 9, we would need 4 members to fill the 9 spots. Yes.
Yeah. All right. As I had said previously, I would prefer to stay at 7, but I know there is a motion from 2 of my fellow supervisors to move it to 9, and if I get outvoted, I get outvoted. But I would be in favor of keeping it at 7.
Okay, Kath, do you have a comment?
I don't. Did you get a second? Do you need a second?
Yeah, well, I have to have a motion first. I don't think anybody have a motion. So can I have
Yeah,
a motion?
I heard a motion.
Motion to 9. Okay, do I have a second to move the total count to?
I second
9?
that motion.
Yeah,
Okay.
Tessie seconded.
Okay. Is there any comments from the audience?
I am looking. I don't see anyone with their hand raised and nothing on contact us. Nothing in the chat room. I don't see anything.
Okay, thank you, Craig. I have a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
I'll go with an aye to make it unanimous.
Thank you. Motion passes. The next order of business then is to appoint board members. Now, Craig, there's some, we had a number of members, so we're going to need a tally sheet to find out exactly who's going to wind up on what board. And I know we've had some thoughts on it. So let's talk about the planning board first. So,
Mr. Chairman, excuse me. I'm sorry. Pardon me. I just want to remind everybody at this meeting and those in attendance who might have been in attendance during the reorganization movement or meeting that these appointments to the Planning Commission and Vacancy Board became a point of, it was a big issue. It raised a big fluster in terms of the process, and it raised a big fluster in terms of the appointments that the chairman was trying to make without any input or collaboration with his fellow supervisors. And I'm really kind of disappointed in terms of transparency, given the great interest that has been shown for these appointments and the importance of the appointments themselves, that we are now doing this in the middle of the summer on a virtual meeting where there was, we gave all of our proper notice, but we know that if this was done virtually and all the proper parties, including the candidates who were interviewed, were notified, that we would have a more robust debate. And I just feel like what we're doing now is round 2 of what was tried to do at the reorg meeting, and just trying to get through these appointments in not too much of a transparent way. So I would like to make a motion to postpone these appointments until which time the candidates who were interviewed can be notified, and that the vote is being taken, and that the public that was very much in attendance at our reorg meeting and subsequent meetings have a chance to attend as well.
So you're putting forth a motion to postpone, is that correct?
That's correct. For all the reasons that I just outlined.
And I second that.
For all appointments, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And Ed Brandt, that's a second.
That's correct.
All right, I'd like to have a vote. All those in favor of postponing, say aye.
Mark, before you
Yes.
take the vote, can we have some more discussion on this?
Oh, I'm sorry. Absolutely. Go right ahead.
So I am not sure how it is that we've been acting not in transparency. We had a series of interviews of all the candidates. It's just taken a very long time to get through this process because of the COVID situation. It was not clear to me exactly how the appointments would be made by motion, or we just called the person and asked them, because I don't know the prior method of doing this, but there is no attempt to be less than transparent in this process. And so we were given the list of people, we had the interviews, we were given ample opportunity to look at the list and decide who we thought were the best candidates. And so I thought that perhaps with the leadership of our chairman tonight, we would put forward the appointments so that these people who have been waiting patiently for 6 months could get on with their committee work. So I am not in favor of postponing it.
I just wanted to make a comment. So we started these interviews as soon as we possibly could in the beginning of February, following the organizational meeting, and we carried them through until May 13th, in the middle of the COVID-19 situation, and we did some virtually to accommodate people. We gave everybody the opportunity that applied to interview, or that wanted to have an interview, because some individuals did apply and then ultimately did not want an interview. But I feel that we were very transparent in that that's what we were going to do, and that every single person, and some people's application, I think went back as far as September or October. And we granted them the opportunity to interview as well. So I don't agree that it's not transparent. I mean, all of the individuals who were interviewed during the process of the interview were asked a series of questions to ensure that they still were interested, and if they were interested in any other committee that we have, in case for whatever reason there wasn't space for them on that committee that for which they applied, or at least initially indicated on their application. So we were trying to ensure, I think we were lucky, and actually, that we had so many applicants, at least for the Planning Commission. For the other committees, there wasn't as many applicants, but I don't see how this could in any way be skewed as being non-transparent. What we're trying to do is get on with the business of the township, despite the fact that we do have some hurdles and some obstacles that we're facing, one of which is COVID-19. And we're doing it via Zoom, and I think, honestly, this is the highest attended meeting that we've had via Zoom. So it appears that everyone was aware that we were having a meeting tonight, and has the opportunity, at least from the safety of their home, to participate as needed, or if they so choose. So I would not be in favor of postponing this yet again.
Well, I am not speaking to the number of applicants or the interview process. I am speaking to the lack of notification to the candidates, the venue that we are taking this important vote on right now, especially in the context of how things unfolded at the beginning of the year with these appointments. So.
Well, as you might imagine, Ms. Hunsinger, I disagree completely with your characterization. As Ed Brandt stated, this township has never seen a meeting of the likes of that reorganization meeting. I've been on the board, I'm starting my 12th year soon, and Mr. Brandt's been on for 30 years, and I have to agree with Mr. Brandt. Nothing like that has ever happened before. Having said all of that, let's hear from the members of the public. Does the public have any comments on this process? Craig, has anybody raised their hand?
Sorry. I have a question here that came in through the chat. I would like Ms. Hunsinger to explain venue. More people are able to attend this meeting via Zoom.
By venue, I do mean Zoom. I feel that it would have been, of course we have the restrictions of the epidemic or the pandemic, but if we compared this to the reorg meeting and the subsequent meetings, because of the great interest that was sparked in these appointments, I don't believe that this venue is as accommodating. And again, notification was not given to the 11 or 12 or so candidates that we interviewed that were interested in these positions.
Are there any more comments, Craig?
I have, I'm gonna unmute Diane, who has a question.
Oh, hello, thank you. I just will say I've been really trying to track all the way from the January meeting. And I must say, it really is confusing as to who is being vetted for what post. Are there terms for these posts? The only active discussion I remember hearing was something about the parks individual, and there was a big discussion around the solicitor. And yet there was no one else, but it seems like there are other posts that are being considered. But how do we disengage somebody who's already actively engaged and say we're opening it up? Is every role open every year at the beginning of the year so that everybody starts fresh? Or if you have someone in a position, do they get some kind of special consideration to be, you know, contacted to say we're going to open up the role? And if you do it for that person, it would seem to me you should do it for everybody to say all roles are up. I'm very process driven, and I'm just not understanding a process. What I am picking up from you folks is not everybody has weighed in, and you're never going to get buy-in until everybody weighs in. And if somebody feels it just has to be one person who feels, you know what, I've not been heard. And the whole team, your team, you got to stop, you got to pause and allow that engagement. And I think that's leading, at least from my end, I'm confused. So I would like a lot better clarity on what this process is. And just because somebody says there's no transparency, we don't have to build in that there's malfeasance here, or, you know, we can assume positive intent. I am for everybody here. My gosh, you guys are all volunteers. I respect you greatly. So I'm assuming positive intent. I'm just saying things could be working better. And if there are one or two people on that team that feel strongly, I think they're going to be far more cohesive, not only in this decision, but every decision, if you guys pause and have everybody feel like they have weighed in. I really believe that sincerely.
Diane, could I have your full name and your address, please, for the record?
Diane Cedar, I'm in Gwen Air.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else that has a comment or a question, Craig?
I don't see anyone on contact us in the chat or.
Okay. Diane, I'm going to try to answer your question the best I can. Each committee has members on it, as you might imagine. They're volunteers, and their membership is for a term. And depending on the committee, the term can change. Now, those terms of service, they do not all expire at once. They're staggered, right? So you can't have a board, in this case planning, with everybody's term up at the same time and still get your work done in a cohesive way. At least I don't believe you can. So those terms of service are that people get appointed to are fixed, and like I said, they're published. Now, if someone wants to serve on a board, we have an application. We have a volunteer application, and I believe that's on the website. Is that correct, Craig?
Correct. That is on the website. Yes.
Yeah, so you can fill out a Lower Gwinnett Township volunteer application, and the application has various boards that you could check that if you're interested. Planning is the first board, Parks and Rec is the second, and so forth. And then you fill out the rest of the form, and then you submit the form. We've never had this much interest. That was said previously. And we've never had a situation this contentious. It just has never happened. So the process is when a board position becomes open and a member of the community is interested in applying, they apply. And it's just like any other interview process. The staff and the Board of Supervisors review your application. And if there's an opening and if the board feels appropriate, there's usually a conversation that takes place. And let me just back up a little bit. You can be reappointed to a board. So when the term is up, there may not be an interview, especially if there's no positions open, or if the applicant or if the current board member is still interested in serving. So that's how the process works. Now, when those applications came in, we looked them over, we interviewed, and that took quite some time because of the number of people that were interviewed. And now we're at the point where, months later, actually, the positions are still open. They would have normally been filled some time ago. And now the supervisors get to recommend or select who it is they feel is the best candidate on the board for the open board position. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, Diane, but I hope it does.
Well, yeah, I really understand the logic behind what you're saying, that I did not know that there were terms. Thank you. And it does make sense that they're staggered. Otherwise you have everybody gone at the same time. So I get that absolutely. I guess where there is some confusion, and honestly, with your permission, I would just like to invite a different energy around, the term contentious involves an energy and an activated disruption to it. I would like to say there has been a whole lot of repeated confusion around this that we've not gotten a resolution around, because when I listen to all of you, I don't hear anybody talking contentious. We should be able to disagree respectfully. And I'm very proud. I was at that other meeting that was not so good, but everyone is showing up, in my humble opinion, and I pay attention to details. I think everybody's showing up very cordially, very professionally, and I'm not hearing any contentiousness. So I would just like to re-invite everybody to accept that there can be differences without contention. That being said, I do believe there has been some major bifurcation of how two views. I know there was things around parks, and there was also things around solicitor, that there was confusion. Like, for instance, the solicitor position, was that one of the ones that came expired? Because that talk, I remember, was back in January. Was that term expired?
No. We're interviewing for a solicitor currently.
Okay.
No decisions have been made.
One thing at a time. Why are we interviewing for a solicitor if that term is still in effect?
There is no term for a professional contract.
Oh, there is no term for that. Okay. So what is the
contractors? The engineer is a contractor. The solicitor is a contractor.
Okay. So what's the mechanism for people that we are hiring as outside contractors to be considered?
We haven't, except for the solicitor, we haven't had one for quite some time. I think it was the last one we had was the engineer. The engineer we had retired, and we opened up the field. He was a contractor. We opened up the field for interviews, put out an RFP, and firms submitted their applications. We reviewed them, we interviewed them, and then we selected one.
Okay, and just to put a bow on it, I feel there needs to be just a bow on, particularly there's a lot of discussion around solicitor. Can you share what the reason is? I think this gentleman has, I'm sorry, I don't remember what his name is, but it was somebody that I think had been around for a long time, and there was some resume background. I remember listening to in a meeting, and I thought the gentleman sounded very, very impressive. So I'm just wondering, what is the reason to put out an application for that particular role?
I mean, why did we put out together, put out an RFP? Is that your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Would any of the supervisors care to comment?
I wanted to comment on that. Hi, Diane, it's Danielle. I don't know if you can hear me or not. So at the reorganization meeting, and this is the first time, at least Tessie and I have participated in this. So much of what Mark told you is true as far as the volunteers are concerned. For the professionals that are contractors, at any point when the reorganizational meeting takes place, you have the opportunity of deciding if you want to continue or if you would like to do a request for qualified professionals. My personal view was that we had the same solicitor for close to 30 years. Being a lifelong resident of Lower Gwinnett, that meant that, I'm giving away my age, but when I was 12 was when he first started working in the township. So we wanted just the opportunity for other qualified professionals to apply. It does not mean that we fired him. It does not mean anything beyond the fact that we wanted to open up the opportunity for anybody who felt that they were qualified to put forth their resume or CV to explain why they feel that they could, be of benefit to our township. That hadn't been done in close to 30 years. So we felt at any organizational meeting it could have happened. We felt that it was a good time to review the options that we had as a township as far as representation for a solicitor. It doesn't preclude the person, it was Whistler Pearlstein. It did not preclude them from applying. It did not preclude anyone. It was for everyone who was an interested party as far as representing the township to submit an application and for us to review it and make a determination as who we felt would be the best fit for us moving forward. So I know a lot of people keep saying, why was he fired? That did not take place. His contract was not renewed, and we did a request for proposal, allowing any and everyone, including him, that met the requirements of the RFP to apply.
You did that very succinctly, I must say. Thank you. That was missing from the beginning. Now, would that follow that all the other positions, I don't know what the tenure is for our other contractors, does that mean anybody that's like beyond 12 years or whatever, that we're going to just that refresh the pool? Is everybody, or is that every contractor role now being open?
So Diane, you kind of hitting the nail on the head as far as some of the concerns or questions that I have. There isn't a policy or procedure that the township has in existence as far as it relates to tenure. There is no term limits for anything. And what that means is that as beyond the fact that the volunteers serve for a term and then typically it's renewed, that is what the expectation, or unless somebody resigns or retires or decides to step down, that's kind of how it has, moved forward in the township. Regarding the professional contractors, I think what has typically happened is, and it's hard to say typically because they're a different animal, but the contract is the contract. You're under a contract. They can decide to step down, or we could decide that we wanted to see what other options are out there, or we could decide that this is no longer a good fit for our township and we wanted to open it up and get other individuals an opportunity to tell us what their qualifications are. So if you put aside the professionals, if you just look at the volunteers, it's more aligned with what Mark said. But the issue, I guess, that we had, and as I had, I'll just speak for myself. When we entered into an organizational meeting, we did not have access to anything until that moment that we were sworn in. So that moment that we were sworn in, we had to go up onto the dais and then vote for things. without having the opportunity to interview anyone, or to really get a good sense of what applications we had already received. So our focus could not be as expansive as it turned out to be. So when we interviewed for all of these volunteer positions, including planning and commission, people applied for EAC and green and so on and so forth, what we have to work with is the number of vacancies and the people that actually applied. And I think there needs to be some awareness just for the general community, that you can put in an application if this is of interest to you at any point. The township as it stands right now, I believe, holds on to it for a year, gives you the opportunity to be a volunteer. And that's what everybody is. They're a volunteer. So the fact that we have volunteers scammering to help us with our planning commission, with our EAC, with our Parks and Rec, we're all ecstatic about.
It's way worse. Yeah, that's a good problem.
And that's the reason why I felt with people that are that passionate about wanting to represent and wanting to give their talents to the commission, I felt that it was in our best interest to increase. And I'm just speaking for me, the board to 9.
I think.
Thank you for your question.
Very reasonably, Danielle, you articulated that very reasonably. And I would just put a ... that because you have such enthusiasm, you don't want to damper it. And it's really important, if particularly if somebody's not getting accepted, you know, when you don't get it, well, I've been on that end, when you don't get it and it's your personal time, you're offering this, to be really respectful of the communication you have, both, you know, when telling somebody no, or, you know, we are putting something else out, to really, and be grateful and all of that, as well as having a quick and timely response to those people that you're accepting. And I also see a potential opportunity here for onboarding. Like every other organization, they have an onboarding process, and it sounds like you're highlighting some great opportunities that could have helped you been prepared. Yeah.
Diane?
Yes.
This is Ed Brandt. I just wanted to tell you, I'd reiterate your enthusiasm, your questions and so forth, but I want you to make sure for the record, I totally disagree with some of the statements my fellow supervisor made about changes from the solicitor standpoint. Mr. Garrity's firm, Worcester Pearlstein, represented Lower Gwinnett for 34 years. And I will tell you, and I'm not going to expound on it, but if you ever wanted to know how much money he saved to Lower Gwinnett in legal defense brought against our township, it's just phenomenal. I, in turn, and I think one of the other supervisors did support selecting them as our solicitor, but that what happened was we opened it, and that solicitor, Worcester Pearlstein, along with others, were allowed to apply. And that's the process we're going through now. So in turn, I just want to let you know there is another side to a story about why a change was made by boards with different professionals. And I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
Okay, we have another question from Margaret Harkins. I'm going to unmute.
Hi, Margaret.
Margaret, you're back on mute.
Okay, I'll try to stay unmuted. I was at the reorganization meeting in January, and I was very interested because it seemed to me that there were people who were being selected for these committees and commissions with nobody knowing anything except one member of the board. The 2 Republican members of the board had not been consulted, and the 2 new members of the board had also not been filled in, which could have happened. So the decisions that were about to be made, if that had not been stopped, were going to be made based on the opinion and the input of only one person. So that got me pretty interested in it. And so tonight, if we're voting on those appointments, it would be of particular interest to me to see what the qualifications were of the people. If there are, for instance, 3 candidates left for 2 positions on the planning committee. I would like to know what the qualifications are of all of the 3 candidates before you vote, so that I can pay attention and see what happened to the gentleman who had extensive experience and was being summarily booted out of the position. I don't know him. I don't know whether he's would be a good person, not a good person, but I'd like to know, now that the new members of the board have had a chance to do their vetting of candidates, I'd like to see how everybody's voting based on my own perception of what their qualifications are. Will that happen before there's a vote?
I don't see any reason why we can't talk about the qualifications unless somebody else has an objection. Okay, we can certainly do that, Margaret.
Thank you.
Craig, is there anybody else?
Yes, I have another hand raised, although I don't know a name. So they're going to have to say their name and their location. It's RFJ.
It's Bob Janke.
Oh, I'm sorry, Bob. Okay.
No problem. I am one of the candidates for the Planning Commission spots. And I wanted to make a couple of comments about the activities this evening. First off, the fact was that I know I, as a candidate, was not given any notification of this meeting until somewhere between 5:20 and 5:30 when I received a phone call. And I don't think that's normal. At least I don't believe it's how the process would operate in an ideal sense. Secondly, I don't know if, I guess I would ask the question, or all the other potential candidates in a similar position, were they all given notice, and should they not have been given at least the notice of a day ahead of time when the agenda is normally broadcast or posted? Secondly, I don't know, Mark, if you want to take that question first or not. And I have a second question.
Well, we've never had this situation before. Let me just back up. A couple of people have made some comments here. The board has the planning, which is the one I think you're referring to. The planning board has 7 members. 1 member resigned. All right. And the other member, I thought, had decided not to reapply. The left 2. So I was corrected. One of those members did want to retain his appointment, and that left 1 position open. So there weren't, I'm not sure how this got so contentious, but that 1 person that was interested in that job is the former supervisor, Steve Passione. So,
Mark, he was not the only person interested in that spot. He wasn't the only person.
Well, I don't recall who else was interested. Do you, Ed?
There's a list of them.
No.
The applications that were on at the time.
Well, consider, okay. You're opening every application that we had. I understand, but a lot of those applications were not interested in planning. And Mr. Passione is probably one of the most qualified people for that position in the township. So it would have had 1.
I don't agree with that.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
there were applications on file that dated back into early 2019.
Yeah, Ms. Hunsinger, I understand, but in the process that we had followed before, nothing like this has ever happened. Nothing. Never happened. That would have left 1 position open. So you had 3 people that voted for or wanted to vote at that time for that 1 position. As it turns out, we subsequently tabled the vote, and that is putting us where we are today.
That
now,
1 person wanted to be appointed without any of the supervisors interviewing him. or the other candidates.
You were well aware of his 12 years of service or 14 years of service.
I don't think he gets a pass just because of that.
Well, the interview process is
to avoid an interview
qualification. At any rate, Ms. Hunsinger, I'm not going to have an argument with you here. The point of all of this is that we now have a motion before us for 4 slots. And the agendas are posted on the website. So the township supervisors have got to make a decision as to when they want to hold a vote for these positions. And we picked tonight. Now, Bob, I'm not sure how that answers your question, but this is SOP here. This is not new process.
Mark, you picked tonight. You put this on the agenda for tonight.
It doesn't.
And before you, there is a motion to postpone the vote. You have a second.
And also, because it was on the agenda, doesn't mean we're taking a vote tonight.
That's absolutely correct.
That's what the agenda is all about, Ed.
I know that.
We have to have a discussion in public, and which is what we're having. So
yeah,
there's
but you had mentioned, correct me if I'm wrong, a couple sentences ago, you said on the agenda that we were going to make appointments tonight.
It's on the agenda.
What's on the agenda is volunteer vacancies, positions, and appointments. It doesn't mean we're going to have a final vote tonight.
Well, that's what your vote, and my vote, and Kathy's vote, and Danielle's vote, and Tessie's vote is all about. Yeah, I don't get any more votes than anybody else.
But you said that we put it on the agenda. We did not. You did.
No, I just want to clarify. I had asked the chairman if we could get along with, the matters of business. And I didn't want us to wait any longer since we completed the last interview, May 13th, I think it was. And not knowing how soon we would be back in, the township building carrying on with typical meetings. This, I said, would give us the opportunity so that as many people that wanted to participate could participate without masks or without, unnecessarily exposing themselves to anything. That I felt that this forum would give the most people that opportunity to voice their opinions, to be present, and to be a part of the process. So I asked the chairman if he could put it on the agenda today. Does not mean that everybody's going to be appointed today. Does not mean that anyone's going to agree. I just felt that at this point, since we're only going to have another meeting in July, let's go ahead and try and see what we can get done in June rather than prolong this any further.
Well, you have an applicant who applied, was interviewed, and found out about this agenda with a phone call at 5:30, 5:45 this evening.
So, I think the typical way that we've always shared the agenda has been via the township's website. And that is another issue that I'm going to talk about later, Mr. Brandt, because I do feel that we need to change some of the ways in which we have a standard operating procedure as far as communication. I'm not comfortable with how things had been communicated in the past. I think we need to move up and step up our game as far as how we communicate with the public. But that's a different motion, and that's a different conversation that I want to have. As it stands,
yes, now, and we'll have that. We'll have that conversation.
Absolutely, and it's unfortunate if someone did not get direct communication that this was going to be the vote. But I know that they all knew that they had applied and been, that they were interviewed. And I suspect if we do have a successful vote, that we would reach out to each person this evening, or not this evening, tomorrow.
So, are there any more comments from the audience or the supervisors?
Yes, I had another question, which related to the Planning Commission being expanded to 9 people. If we're looking to establish a standardized process, I'm not sure that changing the numbers on the board without some, when there's already quite a few openings on that board, it seems that if you try to expand that to 4 positions to fill rather than 2 positions to fill, the logic escapes me of why you would do that right now beginning of this meeting, when the people who have interviewed for the positions expected it to be a 7-person board. That's what they were interviewed for. And now you've made it a 9-person board. And other than the fact that it seems like we don't like that we did it that way in the past, I don't seem to have an explanation that is consistent with some of the other actions that have taken place. So I don't know if anybody wants to comment on that, but it just doesn't seem to make a lot of sense at this point in time, unless there is another specific agenda that is being pursued to expand that board to 9 people.
Mr. Jenke, this is Danielle, since I made the motion, I can speak to it. Part of our ordinance allows us to have either a 7 or a 9-person board. We had 8 applicants for the Planning Commission. Some that had applied back, I think I mentioned earlier, back to September or October. That level, and 1 person did withdraw their application after they were interviewed. So I think we're working with 7 individuals. So in my opinion, it gives the opportunity, as I expressed in the beginning when I made the motion, for the individuals who represent different makeups, different worldviews in our township, but are part of our community, rightfully so, and should have a voice, giving them the opportunity to be present, to be a part of the conversation, to be a part of how the community shapes itself moving forward. The only con that I could see is if there's a difficulty in making a quorum. There are other townships, 2nd-class townships, that do this. I looked them up. I tried to see the votes to see how often it was that they did not have a quorum. It was not significant. I feel that we are a community that gets along, and part of that would mean that we could have representation from all walks of life beyond, and when I say all walks of life, I mean beyond an engineer, beyond a lawyer, to be present on the board and to share in part of the decision-making process.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Is there anybody else, Craig, that has raised their hand?
I do not see anything in any of the areas.
Okay. All right, I'm asking for a vote. The vote is to, and was seconded, the motion was seconded to postpone the appointment. All those in favor saying, wanting to postpone, say aye.
Aye.
Kathy, you're on mute.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Opposed.
And it's a tie. I am opposed to postponing. So now, Craig, what we need to do here is, since there's going to be 4 appointments to the board, the planning board, we're going to have to keep a matrix of who do we want on the board and who has going to give the appropriate vote for. So are you ready to do that?
Yep, let's go for it.
Okay. Tessie, I know you had a list of possible candidates or candidates that you were interested in. We might as well just start your list, start with you. Could you tell us who you had in mind for your planning board, planning picks?
Yes, I would like to recommend Mike Rashid. And if we're going to talk about the qualifications, I would just say he's an executive with a very impressive resume. He's got international experience and a tremendous amount of management experience. Richard Valiga, who is an engineer and very experienced was a former member, or I guess I refer to him as a former member of the Planning Commission, and he was enthusiastic about rejoining. Maureen Nunn is a chemist, and I believe she would bring another perspective to the Planning Commission. And then I think a person that has a lot of experience in our township is Steve Pacione, and I think he would make a another addition to the Planning Commission.
Okay. Thank you very much. Kathy, would you like to go next?
Sure. I concur with Tessie on Rich Valega. I think he is very qualified. He's very well regarded by the fellow Planning Commission members of whom he served with for 6 or 9 years, I believe. And he's well deserved to be to remain on the Planning Commission. My second candidate would be Chastity Bruno. She is an attorney. She is a volunteer over at Wissahickon with her children, labor and employment attorney, and she is a female and she is African American, and I think would be a wonderful addition to diversity and help Danielle and Tessie fulfill their campaign pledges for diversity, which I know Mr. Rashid would do as well. But I would just note, all things being equal, and I think they are equally qualified, that Chastity has had an application in at the township since January of 2019. Thirdly, I would put forward Bob Jenke. You heard from him this evening. He is a retired executive from Roman Hawes. He is a 40-year resident. He has an abundance of international experience, working on numerous and varied development projects. He has an engineering background. He has a management certificate. I don't know if it's a certificate or a degree from Wharton. He can read engineering plans, which is pretty critical on the Planning Commission. Very articulate and bright. Finally, I would like to put forward Dawn Thompson. She interviewed very well. She is a homemaker with 3 children. She's been in the township for 16 years. Let's see. She has served as acting president on 2 separate homeowners association, working closely with board members, homeowners, property management companies, and independent contractors. Also served as the pastoral counsel for her church, and very enthusiastic and very interested to serve her community on the Planning Commission.
Thank you. Ed?
I'd concur with Kathy's recommendations and nominations and votes.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ed. Danielle?
Okay. Go with Rich Valega. Do you want me to give the reasoning why, the expertise? Is that necessary? I wasn't sure if we were all doing that.
That's up to you.
Okay. Rich Valega is an engineer. He's clearly an expert. As it came to reading plans, he actually walked us through how he reads plans, the preparation he does for each meeting. He's very passionate about the Planning Commission. And I feel that him remaining would be an asset. Mike Rashid, he is a former executive of a major healthcare organization within the United States. He oversaw the largest program in the Eastern Seaboard and our tri-state area related to providing managed care to underserved individuals. He's just extensive, I can't get into it all, extensive executive expertise internationally and, within our country. The other one is Maureen Nunn, who is new to the community, fairly new to the community, and is a chemist. And Steve Passione, who of the 2 supervisors who applied to be on the Planning Commission, I felt would bring the best breadth and depth of knowledge to the commission.
Okay, so the only one we appear to have in common between the 4 of you is Rich Valega. Other than that, it's a complete lineup to the 2. So that means I vote, and my answer would be Rich Valega. Mr. Rashid? Maureen, chemist, Steve Passione. Okay. The next selection we have is...
Wait, we haven't discussed or voted, or you want to do it all at once?
Well, we just voted on the planning commission. So
you didn't offer any discussion.
Well, we've been discussing the planning commission. So if you would like some more discussion, Ms. Hunsinger, please go right ahead.
Yeah, okay, I will. I think we're making a big mistake, or I'll reword that. I don't think that Steve Passione, especially in relation to some of the other remaining applicants that we have, in particular Bob Jenke, should be appointed to the Planning Commission. Here is his application. It was filed in December. It's not complete. It just has his name and his number and a check on the Planning Commission. Here's Bob Jenke's resume, full. And as I objected back in January, and I'm doing so again today, the two new supervisors, their election campaign platform included accused the former board of backroom deals and insiderism. So I'm a bit miffed why they would want to appoint a member of that former board to our planning commission. And it also has a hint of backroom deals as well. I think clearly that there are other more qualified candidates, and I strongly object to that appointment.
I just want to speak to I thought we already voted, but I just want to speak to what Supervisor Hunsinger has asserted. So of the 8 individuals that applied to the Planning Commission, and this is part of why I was talking about we need to communicate the opportunities that are available for residents of the township to participate. Of the 8 individuals, 1 individual withdrew their application, so there's 7 that we're working with. 2 were former supervisors. I don't see how we could argue that being a former Board of Supervisor member, we could assert that anyone has better knowledge of the inner workings of the township and or the Planning Commission other than Dr. Booth and Mr. Passione. And to me, the last position was between those 2 individuals because the breadth and depth of the knowledge that they've experienced being on the Board of Supervisors for the length of time that they were. And I do believe Mr. Passione previously had sat on another commission. I don't think that anybody could argue that their presence and their knowledge would be an asset to any commission that they chose to volunteer for, that they chose to still give back to their community for. So my last position was between those 2 individuals, and that was what I was looking for. And I decided that, you know, Mr. Passione is extremely passionate about wanting to continue to volunteer in his interview. So I don't have his application to show up or anybody else's application to hold up in front of me. But through the interview process, they both were passionate about continuing to volunteer. But of those 2, that's why I chose Mr. Passione.
If I may comment, Danielle, you mentioned the qualifications of Mr. Mike Rashad, and rightly so. How you could bypass Mr. Jenke's qualifications compared to anyone else, just beyond me. If you're highlighting one person that applied and elaborate on his background, if you check the background of Mr. Jenke, I'm just surprised that was ignored. But the vote has been taken.
I don't think we have taken a vote. We need to take a vote.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I think you do need a motion, a second, and a vote. If you perhaps raise the 4 names that you believe would have the most support, you can make a motion for all 4, get a second, and vote on that. But you do need a formal vote.
Okay, I have a motion. I'd like to.
I also have a hand raised in the audience if we want to take that before.
Okay, go right ahead.
Diane again.
Oh, yes, just in the spirit of full transparency, I'm just curious. I'm not making any assertions, but I would like each of our supervisors to share any past or current personal dealings that you've had with any of these people you are endorsing that could in any way shade your promoting them. I would just like to know that.
I can start. I had never met Miss Nunn prior to her interview. Well, you want me to talk about the people I'm recommending or all?
I mean, you feel free to share whatever, but I just want to know if somebody has had any past experience or working on a project with them, or I get other projects that that they have given to me in the past, and I really enjoyed working with them. I like their work ethic because I'm currently working on something with them. I just want to know the full perspective of, you know, what it is. Like particularly this, there seems to be Mr. Rashid, Mr. Passion. There seems to be a lot of, for me, it's like if there's somebody that's crystal clean, that has no anything negative, or anybody that's personally had an experience with them, that's the cleanest way to go forth. So it's not a matter that anybody's not qualified, but what are the grounds you're looking at? Somebody who comes with both character and experience is what I'm looking for.
No, I can only, so I'll just start just so we can get through. Of the 4 individuals, I have no interactions personally or otherwise with any of them. Some of them I met during the interview process. Most of them actually I met during the interview process. I knew Dr. Booth and Mr. Passion because they sat on the board of supervisors. So for me, I come from a background of interviewing for civil service. So I kind of measure people around what my own internal qualifications are, because we didn't have a rubric, because there's no set guidelines as far as what qualifications suit you better for being on the planning commission versus another. That was my measurement. That was the yardstick with which I evaluated it. I looked at the composition of the current board. I looked at what other individuals could be an asset and bring a different perspective or a fresh perspective to the board. And through that, that's how I measured everybody. I also looked at their overall knowledge. Mr. Valega stood out beyond anyone as far as his understanding of how to interpret plans, his understanding of the process, and his educational and experience in just being on the board for so long. The remaining individuals, it was more around the idea, because they hadn't been on the board thus far, it was more around the idea of evaluating how could they complement, how could the board be benefit from their presence, and then kind of going from there.
Okay. Yeah, it's that comment. I don't know if that's true, but I got to tell you, just as a resident here, hearing anybody that has been, I don't know how true it is, of the back dealing, and it seemed like there's some drama or questions around Mr. Passion that I haven't heard anybody say about any of the other ones. So
Diane, there's not any questions per se. It's just the fact that Supervisors Duckett and McNeely ran on they wanted to get rid of the backroom deals and the insiderism of the former board, of which Steve Passion belonged to. So I don't know why they are appointing, in their words, an ethically challenged individual to our planning commission.
It is curious. I've just got to say, it's just not sounding logical to me. Particularly, is there anybody, does anybody, it seems like I'm sensing parties here too, I got to tell you also. Is there anybody that would be opposed? I know everybody, you love the people you presented, but would anybody be against? I see Mr. Janke here is here. He's attending, which means a lot to me. Would anybody be opposed to him?
You know, we have been elected to do this job, Diane. Can we please carry on? We've been going at this now for a while, and I don't like to cut off anybody's discussion, but we do have a chairperson who leads us in our discussion. And so I would like to follow, you know, the rules of conducting a meeting and have the chairman lead the discussion and have the remarks from the community be limited in length of time in the interest of getting through our business tonight.
I respectfully accept that, Tessie, and I apologize for inadvertently creating any adverse processing here. I do apologize, and I thank you for generously offering me the time. I thought this was important enough to know if there was any background information you had on these. I thought that would be for the interest of everyone, but I will quietly sit back and take it all in.
And thank you for being an active participant.
Okay, I just want to comment on one thing that Kathy Hunsinger said. She used the word ethically challenged in relationship to Mr. Passione. I'm not aware of any ethics issue Mr. Passione had when he was on the board. None. So
I didn't accuse him of that. I said that those were the words
challenged.
In the words of Supervisor Duckett and McNeely on their campaign materials.
That I just want to make sure no one is disparaging any of the applicants here. We're fortunate that we have such a good pool. And it's our job as supervisors to make a selection. So I need a motion to select as a group all four of the candidates that were talked about here or voted in or were marked up individually. So Steve Passione, Mr. Rashid, Rich Vallegra, Maureen Nunn, and I think that's all four, right? Rich Vallegra, I want to make sure I mentioned him. So can I have a motion to appoint all four of these members to the planning board?
So moved.
Can I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
So if I may bifurcate my vote, I vote for Rich Vallegra of that group. The other three I do not support.
Thank you. Mr. Brandt.
I just, I don't know how three of my fellow supervisors, upon looking at the credentials of Mr. Jenke, can put him beyond anyone that they have already voted for. But that's for those supervisors when they revisit Mr. Jenke's background to see how he was passed over. That's all my comments.
Okay, since there is not a consensus, I am voting for Mr. Rashid, Mr. Vallegra, Maureen Nunn, and Steve Passione. The ayes have it. Thank you. The next position that we have opening, Tessie, you want to continue with your list?
Yes, we had one applicant who specifically asked to be on the Parks and Rec board, and that was Mr. Berdahl. And I would like to recommend him for that position. I think he was very well qualified. I'd like to just say one word to Mr. Brandt about our not choosing one person over another in our previous vote. My objective was to diversify the thoughts and the people representing the community on that board. If I looked at the list and two people had similar qualifications, then I picked one that I thought would add more diversity. If somebody had the same qualifications as somebody that's already on the board, like a lawyer perhaps, then I said, well, maybe let's not get another lawyer. So there is no disparaging anybody's qualifications by me, nor probably any of the other members of the board. So please don't try to compare somebody and say they're better than anyone else. Everyone, according to our township rules, of which there are 0, describing the qualifications for each of these positions. So we had to use our best judgment, and I'll let it go at that.
And I would like to answer you that you have your judgment and I have my judgment, and let it be at that.
Sure.
Thank you. So I have a motion to appoint Mr. Berdahl to the Parks and Rec Committee. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Enthusiastically.
Opposed? Thank you. Mr. Berdahl is appointed. Tessie, who did you have on your next one? Is your next appointment on your list?
The next position was an opening on the vacancy board, and we only had a single applicant, who is Deborah Schaefer, and she interviewed very well. I personally know Deborah, so I can say that. And so I would recommend her for this position. I think she's a highly ethical, educated person, and will be very fair-minded.
Okay. Is there any discussion from any of the board members on this appointment?
Yes, I would like to nominate Mr. Jenke because Mr. Jenke, I think, would be neutral. I know would be neutral and unbiased and thoughtful on this position. The vacancy board, for those of you who don't know what it is, it's called a board, but it is comprised of one individual who, in the event where there's a tie to an appointment of a supervisor, would break that tie. Deborah Schaefer did interview very well, but in my view, she has an inherent conflict of interest. She is a Democratic committee person. She's very involved in the Democratic Party. And I have more faith in Mr. Jenke casting a neutral vote than I do in Ms. Schaefer.
Okay, Ed, do you have a comment?
I second with what Kathy has said.
Okay, Danielle?
Just have a question or I guess it's a point of clarification. Through any of the positions that are volunteer that we are appointing, is there anything prohibiting anybody from being involved in any political party? Whether it be as a committee person, judge of elections, any of that?
Nothing in writing, no.
Nothing in writing.
No, not that I'm aware of.
But I think that's an inherent qualification for this position.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I have a motion to appoint Diane. Is there a second?
Deborah.
I'm sorry, Deborah.
I second the motion to nominate Deborah for the vacancy board, as she was the only applicant that specifically applied for that position.
Okay, I have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Opposed?
Okay, I'm going to vote for her, so she is appointed to the vacancy board.
Let me clarify something that was said, if I may, Mr. Chairman, that the vacancy board position is appointed by the supervisors, and there are not a chance for anybody to apply for that position because it's an appointee from the supervisors without applications coming forward. Otherwise, we would have the Republican committee person applying and so forth. Just for the record.
Thank you very much. Next up on the agenda is a proclamation for the 2020 graduates. Craig.
Yes, at the last meeting, sorry, I didn't know if I was on. The board asked to have a proclamation ready to go for this meeting. And in front of you is the proclamation for all the graduates of 2020 from any public or private schools in the area.
Okay. And we requested this from you. Is that correct, Board of Supervisors? Just so your audience knows.
That is correct. At the last meeting, yes. You asked me to put a proclamation together, and it is in front of you tonight.
That was Danielle's idea.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion for us to accept the proclamation.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Everyone would have to come in and sign that proclamation, and it would be available to any graduate or anyone in the township that wanted a copy of the proclamation that is currently on the screen now. But everyone would have to come in and sign that before it is ready to go out.
Thank you very much, Craig. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. I already did that, didn't I, Craig?
Yes, Kathy, you were in the other day and I had you sign it. Yes.
Craig, question.
Yes.
How are you going to make the graduates aware of the proclamation? Were you going to send it to the schools? It's going to be rather difficult when you have residents who live in Lower Gwinnett and go to a number of different schools.
Yes, it'll be on the website, and anyone that wants to contact us will be able to contact us. We'll put it out on social media as well.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Next up on the agenda is authorization to advertise the Welch Road pedestrian trail bids. Greg?
Yes, the Welsh Road. I'm going to give this to the engineer, Jim Hirsch, who is on the line here.
Thank you, Craig.
Yes.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks for attending.
Yeah, no problem. So this is a project we've been working on for a while. The goal is to provide safe pedestrian access to a neighborhood that currently doesn't have access to the township's trail system. That neighborhood's located at the southwest corner of Tennis Avenue and Welsh Road. It contains roads Landfair, Annismead Road, Llewellyn Road, Baker Avenue, for reference. The project would install a pedestrian bridge across Park Creek, tributary to the Little Neshaminy, and then about 600 feet of sidewalk up Welsh Road to connect to Lloyd Avenue, and then allow those residents from the neighborhood I just mentioned to be able to go through Lloyd Avenue onto the J&J trails, and then essentially out to McKean Road and anywhere else in the township that those trails connect to. The project is fully permitted and designed at this point. So the next step would be, we'd be asking the board to authorize my office to advertise the project, put it out to bid, and then we'd be back to you once we receive those bids to ask the board to consider moving forward with the project.
Now, Jim, that path in the bridge, you're along a state road. So I'm assuming you got permission from PennDOT and the plan was approved?
Yeah, the plan has been approved by PennDOT.
Okay, and when do you think the bids would come in?
I want to advertise it in July. I want to take pretty much all of July to get it in contractors' hands. And then I would think that I'd be back to this board in August for an authorization to, accept the bids that we receive.
And do you have any idea when the construction could start?
At that point, the construction could happen in the fall.
Oh, great. Well, thank you very much. And for those that on the call, Lower Gwinnett has a number of trails and we're always looking to add them. Now, this particular trail will connect a community, I would say, of at least 50 houses. Is that about right, Craig?
A little bit more than that with the two neighborhoods there, yes.
So it's going to give that, right now, that community on Welch Road is an island. So unless you're going to go in a car, you can't really go anywhere. I mean, you can walk some of the streets in their immediate neighborhood, but that's it. So this would give all of those residents access to the greater trail system in Lower Gwinnett. So it's a big deal for them. It's taken us, quite some time to get this done. But quality takes time sometimes. So let's hope we can get this all done soon. So do I have Any questions from any of the supervisors? No, are there questions from anybody in the public?
I don't see any.
Okay. Can I have a motion to authorize the advertisement of the Welch Road pedestrian trail bids?
So moved.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay. Motion passes. Next on the agenda is a recommendation for the Pike Fest Committee and Pike Fest 2020. We have a list of potential members.
Tessie, you want me to do it?
Sure.
The Pike Fest Committee met last Thursday. Was it the 18th or 19th? I believe it was we met the 18th.
18th.
And we talked about it and discussed the possibilities of us continuing forth with the Pike Fest or postponing it, similar to other events in the area that have been postponed due to COVID-19. And everyone agreed that it was in the best interest of the public and their health and safety to postpone the Pike Fest for 2020 to 2021. So that is our recommendation.
Okay. Do I have a discussion from any of the supervisors? No. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Is there anybody from the audience that would like to make a comment on the cancellation?
1 minute here. I see nothing.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. Motion carries. Next, this is not on the agenda. And it's a resolution. And this is a resolution about Mr. Floyd's death. And I'm going to read it to everybody. It will be up on the website, but I'm going to read it so everybody understands what it says. It's from the Lower Gwinnett Board of Supervisors. Whereas the last few months have required us all to focus on what community in action looks like, all Lower Gwinnett residents have sacrificed, sheltered in place, socially distanced, so that the most vulnerable amongst us remain as safe as possible. Our lives were altered, but we rallied to ensure that we did what was best for the individuals who make up our community. And whereas, after the murder of George Floyd, we were horrified, saddened, and left in a state of disbelief and grief. Mr. Floyd's death was just the latest in a long and tragic line of Black lives that were ended by abusive and callous police authorities. And whereas the Lower Gwinnett Police Department recently shared its shock at the death of Mr. Floyd and reiterated the police department's commitment to protect and serve with compassion and concern. Lower Gwinnett is fortunate to have a department with an excellent history of service, of serving the communities. We are proud of our community's history and wanted to be at the forefront of addressing the complex needs that are presented by accurately representing everybody's needs. However, we still need to commit ourselves to ensure that everyone in our township feels safe. And whereas Black Lives Matter is about humanity, it is a movement that advocates for affirming the humanity of Black lives in the face of historic, systemic oppression. As township supervisors, we concur that Black Lives Matter, and we support our First Amendment right of peaceful protest under the Constitution. Support those who affirm that right and admonish those who would abridge it. And therefore, it is resolved as a township, we need to discuss what the community safety means to us and what it should look like. We do not have all the answers, but using best practices and data-driven models, we must begin an inclusive community dialogue. And therefore, it is further resolved, the Lower Gwinnett Township Board of Supervisors will be holding open meetings within the next 6 months to address community safety issues so that Lower Gwinnett can create and implement a set of best practices for community safety. Do I have a motion to accept the resolution?
I have a comment.
Before you make a motion, I'd like to give comments to you, Mark, and also all my fellow supervisors. I had sent out on July the 11th to all the supervisors about a vision for public safety. And in looks like a 3-paragraph thing where I do not think an exchange of ideas with our police department is definitely necessary for our residents to be educated on how our police department has been certified, and there's only fewer than 10% of police departments in the state that have been certified with their policies, law enforcement, and accreditations. They also are re-evaluated every 3 years by a 3-member panel. I had sent this out because I feel this those comments that I sent out on the 11th of June were more appropriate. What really concerns me on your statement that you're suggested, Mark, is the first 3 paragraphs are fine. The last 2 paragraphs are fine, but I have a serious concern with the paragraph where it says, whereas Black Lives Matter is about humanity. And it's a movement of, and it goes on about the face of historic systematic oppression, that the township supervisors, we concur with Black Lives Matter and we support our First Amendment. Part of that I do agree with, but what really concerns me is the expression Black Lives Matter, and I put all lives matter. I have a major concern, and people in this country do, as for what is behind Black Lives Matter. There are financial people pushing this that is destroying statues that represent historical factors of how this country was put together. And I really have a concern with that. I can't tell you I'm not going to get into my background, but I'm surprised, Mark, that you submitted this without a full discussion with the board, but maybe you have, but not with me. Again, I support, it looks like 5 out of the 6 paragraphs, but I have a concern, as do a lot of people in this country, what Black Lives Matter mean. And that's why I put all lives matter after Black Lives Matter. There is a serious discussion going on in the country as for how financially these people are going from city to city and destroying historical things in the United States. There, without a doubt, you referred to Mr. Floyd. Without a doubt, 100% of the country know how horrible that was, and everybody is against anything like that ever happening again. But what concerns me is what has happened since then. There are some people rallying behind that, that detriment this country. I'd be the first one to march against any negativity against Black lives in the United States being saddened or horrified with deaths like Mr. Floyd. But this is, if we all take a real look at this, this is getting out of hand. And I have a big concern with this, and I wanted to tell you that up front.
Thank you for your comments, Ed. Any other supervisor wish to make a comment?
I do. So you had told us, I guess, about 10 weeks ago that this was going to happen, and you asked for comments, which I did submit, pretty much in the same spirit of what you just read. But what I wanted to emphasize more in the statement was our good fortune of having a police department that provides safety in a fair and equitable manner, and not anywhere near, doesn't even approach the level that we saw with George Floyd, and that the Board of Supervisors support that and give them the resources they want. So I didn't get any comments from anybody about it either way. So I'm going to sign this thing, but I'd like the following language to effectuate what I think is missing from it added. And that is, Lower Gwinnett Township is fortunate to have a police department that has a track record void of the use of excessive force. They routinely treat all with respect and dignity. The Board of Supervisors continues in our commitment of providing the Lower Gwinnett Township Police Department with the resources to achieve and maintain that result and the equitable handling of all matters. Maybe another whereas paragraph.
Thank you for your input. Would any other supervisor wish to comment?
I'd like to have what Kathy's adding, put that in writing and give that some more thought.
So again, I offer my comments, and that's 2 sentences out of a statement that I drafted in the same spirit, and I'm still not getting any commentary back from my fellow supervisors.
Well, I'm in favor of what you added, Kathy, but I'd like to hear from my fellow supervisors about my concerns, and then I had sent out a memo on June the 11th, and about the great achievements that our Lower Gwinnett Police Department have achieved over the years. And I know there has been some communication back and forth between our chairman and our chief. I also want to point out that I know, and I've been informed that Upper Dublin had a similar type statement, but they did not refer to Black Lives Matter in their statement. And probably because of the same concerns I have.
So I think Mr. Brandt's concerns about the achievements of the police department, Ed, I think that they would be handled by the statement that I just put forth, a couple sentences, and I'd be happy to read it again.
Well, the other thing too is, as for educational seminars that I've recommended for all residents on how the Lower Gwinnett Police Department is certified and how they are reassessed, and also to open it to a question and answer period for any residents of Lower Gwinnett to meet with our police department and the supervisors to review this. But just to put out, Mark, a blank statement without, you do mention the last paragraph we'll be holding an open meetings with over the next 6 months to address that. It's like there's a time limit on it, and I don't think there should be one way or the other.
Can I make a comment?
Oh yeah.
Please go right ahead.
So because I'm in favor of transparency, the majority of the statement that you see, I wrote, and I shared it with the chairman, and I talked to the chairman about it extensively. Because at the time of Mr. Floyd's death, his murder, it was horrible. And I saw that a lot of the other townships were taking a stand. I was going to voice my own singular opinion from the Board of Supervisors, but I felt that it would be more effectuated if we collectively could come together to make a statement surrounding the heart of the matter, as opposed to delving into the very specific nuances of some of the things that were happening specifically in this county. Other townships, other municipalities had written statements, but their statements were focused on admonishing one specific individual who came out against what he believes is a group and his characterization of that group. The diversity that's been present in Lower Gwinnett, and being a Black woman who's raising sons and who's lived in this township, I was speaking from my firsthand knowledge and that of my community. As far as what I feel this community is and what we should be striving to, what we already are, and how we should be moving forward. I was thinking about what actionable items can we take, given all that has happened with our nation and what we've been going through in the last 6 months. How do we transition and move forward from here? How do we not get stuck in the nuance of words and talk about what actually matters, what we care about, what we stand on, and then how we're going to use that to propel us moving forward. So I say all that to say, when we are saying Black Lives Matter is about humanity, we're not talking about any specific group. We're talking about Black lives, the Black lives of the individuals who live in Lower Gwinnett and in this nation. It's not by coincidence that this is global, that this is not just what's happening in Minnesota, what has happened in Atlanta, what has happened in Kentucky. We're not talking about just those specific incidents. Those are just one specific incident. When we're talking about the fact that it has been systemic and systematic, the oppression, in my opinion, is undeniable. What we're talking about is how we as a community come together and move forward. So while we're talking about this, and to others, it might be an exercise in dialogue, it might be an exercise in what we feel is best, but for some members of our community, this is their lives. So we're talking about what it's like to raise Black children in this nation, to grow up in this nation knowing that everybody hasn't always been treated equal. We're affirming that in our belief system, Black people matter, and that we're moving towards a place in our community where it's not something that we're brushing under the rug and saying, oh no, everything is okay, when for a large group of our community, it's not okay. And acknowledging that, stating that, and then stating how we're going to move forward was the key. I'm aware of Lower Gwinnett's police department and how premier they are, of their accreditation, and how that's not something that every municipality has. Once I spoke to, I guess, Chief Kenny many times, just about my feelings, just about his feelings, and just in general, related to the murder of George Floyd and the police department. That open level of communication is unique, I would say, to our municipality. I would say it's unique to our community. I know that most people that live in our community either had I call him Officer Kenny sometimes, Chief Kenny as a DARE officer, saw him in our schools, or have interacted with the different people on our police force. We're unique. We acknowledge that. We're not disparaging our police and their accreditation and the skill set and the level of excellence and the education that they all have. That is not the case across this nation. Many people move outside of Lower Gwinnett in their daily lives. And so acknowledging that we see what's happening in our nation, we are aware of it, it is horrific. What do we as a community want to do proactively to ensure that that could never, ever be feasible inside of our community was the purpose of this statement. The fact that it took 2 weeks for us to just agree on what I feel are very straightforward and simple facts is very saddening to me. And I say that because you guys are mincing over words. And again, we're talking about my life, the life of my children, the life of people in my family, and the life of at least 8% of this community. So us agreeing on this statement and making it, I think, is the floor. It's the minimal of what we could do. And then when things have settled down as far as COVID-19, as far as risk for everybody to be in communal settings, let's have a series of meetings. And what those discussions will be about, we can determine that at a later date. But that was the purpose. That was the reason for this statement.
Danielle, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
When you hear Black Lives Matter, they do, as you know, and all lives matter. But don't you agree that there has been some piggybacks of this country jumping on Black Lives Matter, and they're being influenced by some outside monies that are trying to destroy some historical venues across this country? There's an open discussion about that. It's not about, it's obvious that Black Lives Matter is a great statement and it's well done. But there are people that are using that and doing a lot of wrongs in this country, and enough that you're having riots in a lot of parts of the country. I mean, you have cities being taken over like Seattle, you have Washington, a number of places. And also, you have mentioned about Lower Gwinnett and being raised here, and my background in Lower Gwinnett. Originally, I was raised in Norristown, and I had, in my elementary years in Norristown on Wood Street, I had great African-American families on both sides of when I was raised that young. And my best friends, and still are African-American people from Norristown that are friends of mine. So I want to let you know.
Hello?
Hello?
I'm still here. I still hear you.
Okay. Somebody lost. But I just want to let you know that I do have a lot of your concerns. But I do have a concern now of the term Black Lives Matter is being misused by some outside organizations.
I only have a couple things to say. I don't want to, we've gone on, it's almost 9:30. So I don't want to go too far in depth with this, but I'm just going to touch on a couple of things that you said. So when you're talking about Black Lives Matter and the affinity of everybody knows that all lives matter, we're saying Black Lives Matter, it would be akin to me saying on Father's Day, rather than recognizing my father, saying all parents matter. Well, it's Father's Day. We're acknowledging fathers today. I have no issue with saying, Happy Father's Day, as opposed to walking up to him and saying all fathers matter. Or if I were to say, save the turtles, that does not mean that I don't care about other aquatic life. It means that for whatever reason, something's going on with the turtles and we need to save the turtles. That would be akin to saying Black Lives Matter. I think you're getting caught up in a group. I think you're getting caught up in what you feel is some kind of organized effort. And what we're saying in this statement is what we said, which is Black Lives Matter is about humanity. As simple as that. We're not saying anything else. Obviously, all people matter. But we're talking about the systematic oppression of Black lives and affirming that they matter and affirming that as it relates to humanity. As far as the things that are happening in other areas, we're really focused on Lower Gwinnett right now, but I'm aware of what's happening in other areas. You know, Confederate statues, to me, whether they be historic or not, I don't need a statue to remember the fact that those individuals were treasonous and traitors and did not in any way, shape, or form win the war. I have books for that, and I studied it in school. I'm very well aware of who those generals are. I'm very well aware of what they did and what they did not do. But that's my personal belief. That has nothing to do with this statement. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about and how we're trying to have a conversation in our community moving forward. So asking about those things that are happening in Seattle and happening down south, and that's outside of the realm of what we're talking about and trying to get consensus on this statement. That's my opinion related to that, but I'm going to leave it up to other people, and I'm sure the public or other supervisors have something to say.
I'd just like to put forward my nod, excuse me, Ed, my nod towards our police department, which, as you said, Danielle, we are fortunate here. It is unique. I think it's important to, and it's not heavy-handed. It adds some balance to the statement, acknowledging what they're doing, not in a lofty numerical data way, and also pledging our continued support for that police department, and just an added insert in the language that I recited earlier. Surely that cannot be objectionable, and it doesn't take away from what you're trying to say, what we are saying here, which I completely understand.
May I say something? Thank you. So, Kathy, I feel like adding more information to this statement about the police force is taking away from the point of the memo. Yes, we have a wonderful police force, and we all want to support them. And, you know, we're very fortunate in our community. This is rather a statement acknowledging the strife that has gone on and been brought to a head over the last few weeks, that we acknowledge this. We acknowledge the discrimination against Blacks. We're not saying that whites don't matter, but we're saying let's recognize that this is an undercurrent that has been in our, maybe not specifically Lower Gwinnett, but it's been here affecting the lives of African-American people for so many decades. And so we want to show support to those people in our neighborhood and not just talk about the police force and celebrate the police force. This is a statement rather focused on this situation, which has torn our community, not specifically Lower Gwinnett, but our larger community apart. And I'm fully supportive of signing this and acknowledging that there are people in our community who don't have white privilege, and they have to deal with their lives in light of this. And believe me, I've become more aware of this over the past few weeks than ever, and really it has really made me think about taking things for granted from my viewpoint and not seeing another person's viewpoint. So while I think your addition to the statement is of merit, it really, I think it belongs in a separate memo. I would like to see this one focused more about the issues that Danielle has highlighted.
Well, just to take that a step further, Tessie, and thank you, that undercurrent is being, people that will say it's emanating from the police force. And we don't have that undercurrent here in Lower Gwinnett Township, at least as far as I know. And if we do, we have best practices in place to improve if we need improvement. And the Board of Supervisors should add to this statement, because the focus has been so much on the police, that we are cognizant and we are giving our police department, who are performing very well, the resources. It's a simple nod. It's a very innocuous statement, and I really don't think, and I'll read it again. Lower Gwinnett Township is fortunate to have a police department that has a track record void of the excessive use of force. They routinely treat all with respect and dignity. The Board of Supervisors continues in our commitment of providing the Lower Gwinnett Police Department with the resources to achieve and maintain that result and the equitable handling of all matters. I think it's pretty innocuous and a nice nod to our police department.
Okay. Does any other supervisor have any comment they wish to make? Okay, so I'm going to make a comment. Ed, you said at the beginning of your comments that you knew I was in touch with the chief, and you're right. I've had several communications, several conversations with the chief. And what I was going to do was ask him if he would feel okay with creating a statement or a way to think about what's going on. But I didn't have to. I didn't get to make the call before he had already put out a wonderful statement. And his statement was specifically about how the Lower Gwinnett Police Department looks at this and how it behaves. And then he got another, and before I could even talk to him again after I absorbed that communications, he put out another one because I knew that Lower Gwinnett is one of the 10% of all police departments in the state of Pennsylvania that's certified. And we had to have a policy on force. And he was already getting questions, and he put out a second document detailing it. And so while he was putting out the second document in particular, we were working on this document. This document is not meant to diminish the police in any way, shape, form, or fashion. I think they're the Lower Gwinnett Police Department, I believe, is pretty fantastic. But you know what? I don't know. This is my thinking that they are. And so have we ever held a survey? Have we ever gone out and knocked on doors and had an open meeting? And I think the answer to that is, best to my knowledge, no, because we didn't think we had any issues to talk about. But you know what? I realized we never really asked either. We just assumed it was okay. But Paul covered a lot of that, of the mechanics of how the Lower Gwinnett Police Department runs, how it functions, use of force policies, the certification. I would say few, if any, of our residents knew that. So that was covered in those two documents that our chief put out. And I did reference the Lower Gwinnett Police Department in one of the paragraphs above. And this document isn't about the support or lack thereof or any concern about our police department, because their role is to protect and serve, and they've done that. And I don't want to diminish what's going on with the death of Mr. Floyd. And I, you know, Black Lives Matter is a code word for some people. And you're right, people have taken that statement and done some things that are, you know, not very nice, but they've hijacked some of the terms. They're trying to incite or instill anger in people that they view as are available to incite. It's not true. It is about humanity.
Mark,
right now,
can I ask you?
I'm still talking. Just give me a
Okay,
minute.
I thought you were done. I'm sorry.
And so this document, if you go over the amount of circulation that this had, it took quite a bit of work to get it to where it is. Now, the core document was drafted by Danielle, and ever since then, it's been a work in process. And this is the best I think we can do. Because if we wait any longer, what does it mean? And fundamentally, I don't think there's a problem with this document, in my opinion, because it stays focused. It gives focused attention to what the issues are. And the details around the police department, I think the chief did a wonderful job. And going forward, we're going to have these community meetings so we can talk about issues, because there may be things that we're not aware of, right? I'm sure there are. I don't know what they are, but maybe we need to find out. But this document is to the point. And that's how come I asked that the staff put this in this format as a resolution. And so that's where we are.
Can I ask the question?
Yeah, just going to say, Ed, do you have any more comments?
Yeah, Mark and the fellow supervisors, again, on July 11th, I sent an email about a vision of public safety, signed it, and I gave it a lot of time. I didn't get a response from any of you. And that's why I don't think the residents of Lower Gwinnett realize how prepared and educated and certified the Lower Gwinnett Police Department is. And with that said, and not getting a response, Kathy has asked to have an add-on, Mark, to your resolution here, which you had exchanged with Danielle and whoever else, I don't know. But I got the final draft, but this is such an important resolution that we have to have the type of discussions that we're having tonight to make sure we get this right. And as I mentioned to you and to the other supervisors, I do have a real concern about the paragraph that I mentioned earlier. But I haven't heard any positive comments in reference to what Kathy's saying to add on to this statement. And that concerns me. So I'll be quiet and listen.
I want to give the public an opportunity to talk, but I just want to touch on what Kathy and Ed said. And I think Tessie and Mark covered it, but the purpose of this statement is very narrow. If you wanted to make a separate resolution related to public safety, by all means, Mr. Brandt, that motion could and probably should go separately. But I think what we're discussing, what we're talking about here, the focus is narrow. The point needs to be solidified and almost concise as to what we're talking about and why. And for those reasons, I liked the resolution as it is now. And that's why I didn't offer any additional comments on Kathy or Ed's suggestions, because they sounded like different resolutions to me and they sounded like they stretched beyond what our concise focus was.
And Danielle, that's your opinion. Kathy has hers and I have mine. And that's why this is so critical to have our chairman send this to us. And I know he has reviewed that with you. And I'm sure, maybe, I'm not sure, but Tessie probably has seen this also.
No, I think the final version that you see in front of us was circulated to all of us. I know it was circulated at least twice.
Yes, but also there were other things circulated that weren't discussed, and namely my response back in June the 11th. But that's all right. I'm surprised that you cannot support, Danielle, what Kathy has asked to add to this.
Okay. If there's no more comments, I'd like to open this up to the public. Does the public have any comments on this resolution?
Mark, I don't see any hand
I can't get on.
I have Gloria Jones that I believe wants to say something, so I will unmute her now.
Thank you. Gloria?
Miss Jones, you there?
Mute. I check on unmute and they say the host has stopped it. However, can you hear me now?
Yes.
We can.
Okay, I want to say this. I would like to know that our supervisors have a feeling and hear the voices that have been so long crying out. And let me tell you, those thousands of protesters, they're not all Black Lives Matter people, and all lives will matter only when we can demonstrate that Black lives matter, not only in policing, but in every facet of the life in this township and the United States. I have no quarrel with the Lower Gwinnett Police Force. I am very proud of them. When I have needed their assistance, they have carried out their mission in a respectful and courteous manner. I know how well prepared they are. I have sat on the police committee when we were choosing policemen a few years back. So this is not about policing. This is a much, much bigger thing that we are discussing here. And I know that everyone has their opinion, but I do think some of you are missing the point. This is not about policing. Black Lives Matter. Those aren't the people who are causing all the trouble and burning things up. You just see them focusing on some things. Take a look at the young people and the crowds of people there from all walks of life, all ethnic groups. So please don't sit there and, I'm just so upset. It seems like when somebody says all Black matters, everybody has a convulsion. And it's not about that. It's about all Americans. And as I said before, all lives will matter only when it is demonstrated that all Blacks matter. We may have issues coming up in this township. It may be about housing, may have nothing to do with police. But the rules and regulations that are adopted in this community must demonstrate that all lives matter. Black lives are part of that all lives matter. And I have gotten so upset here listening to you. And unfortunately, I was only ever to get this audio just this very minute. So I thank you for letting me say my piece.
Thank you, Gloria.
I have another hand raised, David Frank.
David?
Hi, Craig. Thank you. I can't say this any better. Oh, I should say I live on Surrey Drive in Gwinnett Valley. I can't say that any better than Ms. Jones just did. I would be very surprised and disappointed if I found that our excellent police department and the police chief weren't like many enlightened police forces sympathetic to the Black Lives Matter movement. This is not about the police department in Lower Gwinnett. There's nothing in here that detracts from the excellent work they do. If you raise that issue, you're entirely missing the point, as has been said so eloquently by everyone else. This is about systemic racism, discrimination, and mistreatment of Black people, our neighbors, in Lower Gwinnett and across the United States that's been going on for decades and centuries. We've got so many issues that we need to recognize in every aspect of our lives. And when we can take this first step toward making this small statement, I think I'm disappointed that it hasn't been said already by the township, and I think I feel like I'm in the majority that most Lower Gwinnett residents would be very much in favor of this statement and the position that the board is taking. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry.
I think I have a comment from Deborah Schaefer.
Okay. Deborah?
Hold on, I'm trying to unmute her.
I like the statement the way it is, and I agree with Mr. Frank that this is not a statement about our police force. It is a statement about where Lower Gwinnett stands in relation to what has been happening in the rest of the country. So I would like to leave it the way it is.
Thank you. Craig?
I don't see any more hands up, nothing in the chat room, and nothing on Contact Us.
I'd like to make a statement.
Go ahead,
Ed. With the comments of Gloria Jones, I defer 100% to her because I respect her and what she has done for Lower Gwinnett and worked on our boards. So I am going to support this resolution after Gloria's statement, and I respect her so much. I don't want to leave an impression that's anything other than the way the statement resolution has been written up.
Thank you. And Ed, I just want to say I understand your passion around supporting the police department, and I don't think any of the board members would have any objection to also putting together a resolution if you're so inclined to showing support for our officers. I think our officers have done a great job. We have probably the most educated police force in the county. We have 1 doctorate, most have master's degrees, and I think there's only 2 that have only bachelor's degrees, right? For a police department, we're highly educated, highly motivated, and they work in a great place. So if you would like to author, or Kathy, or anybody, any of these supervisors, you know, this took a while to get to where it is.
Well, Mark, can I comment on what you just said?
So let's finish. And
okay.
I'm saying, if you want to do that, I'd be, you know, I think all the supervisors would join in supporting our police department. I think that would be, they're good people. They're very good people. So, but yes, go ahead, Ed.
Well, on June the 11th, I did send an email to all the supervisors with 3 paragraphs about that. And so in turn, I've done that, and offering educational seminars, but that could be a second thing. I don't want to defer from what Gloria has said and what the statement is, and I think it may do that if we add anything else to the statement.
Thank you. So if everybody is done, I think it would be helpful if this was unanimous, but you all have a vote. I would like a motion to accept the resolution as stated.
So moved.
Second.
We have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
On the agendas, at this point is citizen comments, concerns, or questions for items not on the agenda. Are there any citizens out there that would like to bring any issue up?
On your bottom, you can raise your hand, and I will. Harry Hellerman. Oh, here you are. Sorry, I couldn't find you. Mr. Hellerman, you have a comment?
Yes, please. I want to speak as a follow-up to an email I sent to the board a few weeks ago. My question to the board had to do with whether Lower Gwinnett was going to respond to a letter put out by Commissioner Joe Gale concerning Black Lives Matter. And here is the board's chance to tell me what their thoughts are on publishing something, as other local communities have, a lot sooner than Lower Gwinnett has. But here's your chance. Tell me what your thoughts are.
Harry, this is
like to comment?
Oh, this is Danielle. I just wanted to say I concur with the chairwoman, Dr. Arkush, and Vice Chair Ken Lawrence in their censure of Joe Gale. I feel that his statements were inflammatory, unnecessary, ill-advised, and nonsensical. I have no issue making a personal statement, but based upon the difficulty we had. I'm sorry, I don't know what that was, but in light of the difficulty we had in getting this resolution passed, we wanted to focus on what we could have hopefully affirm and be in agreement with. But I would have no issue in issuing a statement condemning and concurring with the censure of Joe Gale.
Are there any other comments?
I would like to agree with Danielle's statement. I think that Mr. Gale's statement was really divisive and without merit, and I'll publicly agree with the other two commissioners' censure of that statement, and I support what Danielle I agree with what Danielle just said about it. And thank you, Harry, for bringing this up in a public way.
Any other supervisor would like to comment?
I think that the commissioners dealt with Joe Gale, and what he had to say, as Danielle said, very inflammatory. I personally think that's their job and not ours. And I feel that what we've done here kind of addresses that and supersedes it and stays locally focused, which is always my viewpoint as a supervisor in Lower Gwinnett Township.
I second what Kathy said. Our statement that we just approved supersedes anything.
And I did answer your email, Harry. I don't know if you got that.
I did not.
Yeah, I saw it this morning and replied.
I don't understand what Joe Gale did or why he did it. And those reasons are his own. I think his behavior, though, to be polite, it was not helpful. It's not helpful then, it's not helpful today. He has not retracted the statement. I have a big problem in condemning people, though. When you condemn someone, it's like telling that person they're not redeemable. So when you use somebody's name in that context and you condemn them, you're spreading their name as part of a message, and maybe that was the goal, to have you repeat their name. Or or they have some other purpose that furthers their goals. I, however, can condemn actions. His actions were pretty deplorable. I don't know what motivated him. And I did not want to put his name in this resolution. This resolution, I think, is about celebrating life, celebrating our Constitution, affirming life. That's part of my background, strongly part of my background. And it gives us a way to do something about it. What's missing in a lot of these other statements from most of the other townships, and Ed, you brought up Upper Dublin Township. When I read those, I was like, well, what are they going to do about this? That everybody can make a statement, you know, but you need to back it up. You need to take an action. If you're going to stick yourself out there, you need to have a commitment to make a change, or at least listen to people who may think differently. But most of those resolutions from other townships, the ones I've read anyway, and there were many, they don't appear to do that. I think ours does. Ours is more Lower Gwinnett-ish than those other township statements, in my opinion, because we really do, I believe we really do want to make a difference. And we're going to do something about it. But I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
If there are no more comments, Craig, are there any more comments?
I don't see any.
Can I have one thing, Craig? Can you hear me?
Yeah, who's speaking?
Yeah.
It's the chief.
Oh, Paul, how are you?
Good. Sorry, I'm on a different PC tonight, and I had trouble with my mute and unmute button. I'll be very brief. I've listened to the whole meeting. I just wanted to thank every board member for all of their comments and Gloria Jones' comments. I had a great 2 days with interviews years ago with Gloria. You know, the department feels the support from the board from day one. And in the rough couple months that we've had with COVID and now with the unrest that's going on, the question has always been from the board, from the manager, what do the police department, what do you need? And get it now and we'll worry about paying for it later. And I have expressed that message to every single guy that we have the full support of this board. I appreciate the relationship I have with each and every one of you. And even, you know, Danielle, going back to, you know, your comments about being your DARE officer. I mean, that just, you know, that's a long time ago. And hopefully, you know, obviously I made a connection because you remembered me as Officer Kenny. But I just wanted to throw that out there. I don't need a lot of, you know, you don't have to respond. I felt the comments. I heard the comments. I appreciate it. The whole department appreciated it. We know we have your support and we know we have the community support, but I agree we always look to improve. We have the latest and updated policies. We just got reaccredited, but it's a living document. Our policies can be changed tomorrow because something else that comes down the line we find out is better. So it is always important to listen, to take recommendations, to hear what everybody has to say, and come to good policy. And that's what we're striving to do. So thank you very much for your comments tonight. It is late, so I'll cut it short right there. Thank you again.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Okay, manager's report.
Yes, I have just a couple things. There is an organized peaceful protest scheduled for Saturday, this Saturday, June 27th from 10 a.m. to 12 noon. It's on Houston Road between Knight and Dager Road. So just putting that out there so everyone knows. On June 15th, last Monday, we were able to make settlement on 409 Old Penland Pike. So the township now owns the house and the garages next to the Ingersoll Field on Worcester Road. Well, it's really Worcester Road, but it's 409 Old Penland Pike. So we were able to secure that property to do something in the future, which has not been fully vetted yet. There is a landscaper using the garage that we will, me and Mr. Spears were talking with the tenant, and looks like we were going to extend his lease until December of 2021, which would be a 18-month lease. So hopefully everyone is in favor of that. That's what we're working toward, is an extension of that lease for the township. SEPTA will be performing a culvert project down on the other side of Penland Bluebell Pike off of Worcester Road, underneath the tracks. They have to do basically what we did at Woodbridge Meadow a couple years ago, which is slip line the culvert and clean up the area down there. It's going to be a 3 to 6 month project, and they're going to start in July. Just another information item. And the township offices will be closed Friday, July 3rd for Independence Day, because the 4th is on a Saturday. And that's all I have right now.
Well, thank you very much, Craig. I'd also like to thank our solicitor, Mr. Spears. He doggedly followed the purchase of that that property. It took us, I think it's about a year, perhaps even longer, to actually secure the property. And it turned out to be a situation where you had a willing seller and a willing buyer, and everything, I think, worked out to everybody's advantage. It's always nice to have a win-win. So thank you very much, Mr. Spears. I appreciate all the effort that you put into that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Supervisors' comments. Does any supervisor like to say anything before we adjourn?
Good night.
I want to make a comment. I know no one's going to be happy with this, but since we have once a month meetings, I don't want this to extend till July. I don't know how often other people are contacted, other members of the Board of Supervisors are contacted, but I had been contacted at least a few dozen times recently just about some concerns in communication, whether it be related to fireworks at the Cedarbrook Country Club, to a water main break, to power line being down, not knowing that something was being milled and that traffic would be redirected. And in light of that, it's clear to me that our mode of communication with the community is not sufficient, and that we need to kind of up the frequency, the duration, and the modes in which we decide to communicate with the community. I think my recommendation would be for us to start something akin to Ready Monco, where we're able to text if there's an emergency, at least have a listserv that people can sign up or opt into to get updates around any kind of major public works interruption or road paving or traffic disbursement. So in light of that, I know that when we have done communication or media advisory or press advisory in the past, there has been the opportunity historically, and this is all anecdotal because I don't know, there's nothing written anywhere, but that people have contracted out with a communication specialist to help and or assist with a media advisory or a press release or something along those lines. I would like to make a motion for us to vote on sending out an RFP or an RFQ for communication consultant on the contract basis to, I guess, move us to the 21st century as it relates to involving various modes of communication technology and how we communicate with our constituents. So the motion that I'm moving forward with is that we send out an RFP to get a request for proposal for qualified professionals to be able to provide us communication services on a as needed basis, but somewhat regularly.
I think that's probably a good idea. I mean, that's come up in the past, and we have used specialists before. The one I remember the most was the I Like the Pike program, and that started before I was on the board, so that had to be more than 12 years ago. I've had a number of conversations with Craig and his predecessor about changing communication processes or upping the game a little bit. I think it's probably a good idea. So your motion is to create an RFP.
It's to authorize Craig to send out an RFP requesting proposals for qualified professionals to submit their information as to providing us communication services. The ins and outs of what the communication looks like is not what I'm including in this, but more so that we can get the information in. Given that we're only going to meet 2 more times, the end of July and the end of August, I don't want us to delay any further unnecessarily.
I would second that. Anything to improve upon communication with residents is a plus.
Okay. So we have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor?
Just so everyone remembers, we had a scheduled meeting with a communication specialist back in March when this COVID started. We had to cancel that meeting. So I still have his proposal.
I just want to, in the vein of transparency, I want to give anybody who feels they're qualified the opportunity to send their information in.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with Danielle. I think we'd like to have this in the form of an RFP so that we can get a broad knowledge of what's out there, and not, this gentleman can certainly apply to the RFP, but it would be good to see, get other applications to see what else is out there.
Okay, sounds reasonable. Is there any further discussion? Does the audience have any questions concerning this motion?
I have nothing in the chat box, no hands raised,
okay.
Nothing on the contact us.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, motion carries. So I'd like to thank everybody for coming to this long meeting tonight. This is going to go down in the record books as one of our longest. And I appreciate everybody coming and being patient. And this meeting is adjourned.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.